Okay, hello. I pray you guys are doing amazing and incredible and that all is good. So today we're going to be covering short Tentheeno. We have a previous video in which we covered long Tentheeno. And in that video, we went over the first verse of long Tentheeno that you would typically do if A, you have the time to do it during Tasbihah, and second, if you have enough people who know the hymn or are able to follow along. But most of the time, you'll see Tenthino done in the short tune, and you'll usually see it alternate between Coptic and English, the white being the Coptic and the blue traditionally being the English verses. In this video, we're going to look at every single verse, both white and blue and Coptic. But if you're curious to see what Tenthino would be in all English, there's going to be a separate video on that. But today we're looking at each verse in Coptic. Now, what's important to note about this is that especially with hymns that have a bit of a shorter tune to them, right? So you'll notice this with a lot of the horses, Tenthino, some of the doxologies, there will be slight differences in the way that your church will do it and the way that other churches will do it. So in this video, I'm going to show you just the way that our church does it, but I will also point out some differences here and there that you may be able to notice. But for the most part, it will be pretty standard and will usually follow along the tune that we're learning all together. So we'll start through, and similar to the Sunday Theotokeia video, we're going to go through every single verse, focusing on it in terms of the pace, in terms of the breaks, in terms of the stops, some pronunciation, and I'll go through each 3 times. So I'll repeat it and then note some things that might be helpful to remember in terms of being able to get down the tune and getting down each verse. So we'll start with the first verse, which you've traditionally heard many, many times, and there's usually no difference between the way that one church or another church will do it, but it goes the following. Tentheeno epshoini shirien tepio oini enten hos epshoisen tenigom. So notice that's the same tune also for the first canticle. Okay, but I'll go through it one more time. Ready? So I'll go like this. Tentheeno epshoini shirien tepio oini enten hos epshoisen tenigom. Right? So you're kind of slowing down in the end, right? That's the tune. Now, important to know, you need to be able to read Coptic in order to do this video. If you don't know how to read Coptic, it's not going to help. God willing, we'll have a separate video on how to read and learn Coptic, right? But this is just assuming that you have a basic fundamental knowledge of the Coptic alphabet, pronunciation, and how it ends up working out. Okay, so one more time, we'll go together. Tentheeno epshoini shiri entepio oini enten hos epshoisen tenigom. Okay, so practice that. We'll do it one more time. Tentheeno epshoini shiri entepio oini enten hos epshoisen tenigom. Okay, now we're going to move on to the next, right? Traditionally, if it was in English, you'd hear that he may grant us the salvation of our souls. But instead, in Coptic, it's going to go Hopos entef ermotnan emipsotin tenin ipsishi. Okay, so 2 more times. Hopos entef ermotnan emipsotin tenin ipsishi. Hopos entef ermotnan emipsotin tenin ipsishi. So the entef ermotnan is a little tough because there's a lot of in it. So entef ermotnan. Hopos entef ermotnan emipsotin tenin ipsishi. Okay, so we'll move on to the next. It's going to go the following. Now here you'll notice that there's a difference between the way that some churches will do it, and it happens at the word empek and tho. Okay, so the way that you'll hear some churches do it is they'll go straight through empek and tho. They won't really prolong it or hold it. So it will go like this. So notice we start prolonging it at the somatikos, right? Some churches will do it like this. So notice there's a little of a break after eraten. So it will go but the way that I've personally learned it, it's not necessarily the correct way, but just the way that I learned it in comparison to other people, in comparison to different churches, and the way that some people do it, kind of like my version or different, is just the following. Okay? The next is going to go the following. Ali ten empihinim entity evshi. So on the empihinim, you're going to hold the nim a little bit, right? So it's going to be Ali ten empihinim entity evshi. Okay? Ali ten empihinim entity evshi. One more time. Eli ten empihinim entity evshi. Okay, moving on to the next verse. Moinan ebshoisen umetref ernimfin hopos enten kati enten ohi eraten pekimtho emifnaven teti pros evshi. Okay, so what is helpful sometimes with these types of hymns with shorter tunes is just keeping a beat, right? So if you're learning, for example, any of the hosses, or you're learning the commemoration of the saints, or a doxology, it helps to kind of keep a beat, right? So here we're going a little bit fast, so we're going to go Moinan epshoisen umetref ernimfin hopos enten kati enten ohi eraten pekimtho emifnaven teti pros evshi. Okay, one more time together. Moinan epshoisen umetref ernimfin. So notice that en umetref ernimfin. There's a bit en umetref. Pause. Ernimfin. Hopos enten kati enten ohi eraten pekimtho. Pause. Emifnaven teti pros evshi. Okay, so all together, one more time and practice it. Moinan epshoisen umetref ernimfin hopos enten kati enten ohi eraten pekimtho emifnaven teti pros evshi. Okay, next verse. O enten o orpenak epshoyen ti doxolo geyet prepi o enten shashni epgo evol enten novi etosh doxasi filan ethropi. This one is a little bit hard because there's not a lot of breaks, right? After enti doxolo geya, you're going to have a lot of just things to say, and there's not like a lot of pauses. So the beginning, o enten o orpenak, pause. Epshoyen ti doxolo geyet eperepi o enten shashni epgo evol enten novi etosh. Right, so you just have to rush through it. There's no breaks there. Okay, one more time together. O enten o orpenak epshoyen ti doxolo geyet eperepi o enten shashni epgo evol enten novi etosh doxasi filan ethropi. Okay, one more time. O enten o orpenak epshoyen ti doxolo geyet prepi o enten shashni epgo evol enten novi etosh doxasi filan ethropi. So it's a little hard because it's gonna break from the melody or break from the rhythm a little bit of epgo evol enten novi etosh. Okay, so if we're trying to keep a beat, it's a little bit hard, but we can try. O enten o orpenak epshoyen ti doxolo geyet prepi o enten shashni epgo evol enten novi etosh doxasi filan ethropi. Like that. Okay? So practice it. We'll do it one more time and you can practice it on your own. So just here's the reference. O enten o orpenak epshoyen ti doxolo geyet prepi o enten shashni epgo evol enten novi etosh doxasi filan ethropi. Okay, here's the next one. Hepede esmo epshois nievi aikente epshois doxasi filan ethropi. So there's a pause after epshois. So hepede esmo epshois nievi aikente epshois doxasi filan ethropi. One more time. Hepede esmo epshois nievi aikente epshois doxasi filan ethropi. One more time. Hepede esmo epshois nievi aikente epshois doxasi filan ethropi. So think of it as three verses here. Hepede esmo epshois nievi aikente epshois doxasi filan ethropi. All right. Hepede esmo epshois nievi aikente epshois doxasi filan ethropi. Okay. Moving on to the next one. Nieto hi erato henepi emepshois hene avleo ente epi empennoti doxasi filan ethropi. Okay? Notice here. Nieto y erato, henepi, emepshois, hene avleo, ente epi, empennoti. Notice the pauses. Nieto y erato, pause. Henepi, pause. Emepshois, pause. Hene avleo, ente epi, empennoti. Doxasi fila nethropi. So nieto y erato, there's going to be a pause. Henepi, pause. So that's one. That's a second part. Emepshois, pause there. That's a third part. Hene avleo ente epi empennoti. That's going to also be a break. Doxasi filanothropi. Okay, so all together. Nieto y erato, henepi emepshois, hene avleo ente epi empennoti, doxasi filanethropi. One more time. Nieto y erato, henepi emepshois, hene avleo ente epi empennoti, doxasi filanethropi. Okay, moving on to the next verse. It's going to do the following. Ne enechrichen ni egor fai en neten jij ebshoi nietho abismo ebshois doxasi fila nethropi. Pay attention to where the pauses are happening, because if you skip a pause, it's gonna ruin your whole flow, right? So pay attention to the pauses here. Enechrichen ni egor fai en neten jij ebshoi nietho abismo ebshois doxasi fila nethropi. One more time. Pay attention to where the pauses are happening. Enechrichen ni egor, fayen neten jish ebshoi, ni etho abismo ebshois, doxasi filan ethropi. So after ni egor, there's a pause. After neten jish, there's a pause. Ebshoi also has a pause. Ni etho abismo ebshois, there's a pause there. Doxasi filan ethropi. So altogether, it's going to be Enechrichen ni egor, fai en neten jish, ebshoi, ni etho rabismo ebshois, doxasi filan ethropi. Okay? So one more time, and then we'll move on. Enechrichen ni egor, fai en neten jish, ebshoi, ni etho rabismo ebshois, doxasi filan ethropi. This one is going to fall. This one is going to go, that's the fall. Pshois efe esmo erok evol gension fietaf tamionet finemepkahi doxasi filan ethropi. Okay, so the pause is happening after erok. So pshois efe esmo erok. Then another pause after seyon. Evol gension fietaf tamionet finemepkahi. After epkahi, there's a pause. Doxasi filan ethropi. Okay, so one more time. Pshoisefe esmo erok evol gension fietaf tamionet finemepkahi doxasi filan ethropi. Okay, one more time. Pshoisefe esmo erok evol gension fietaf tamionet finemepkahi doxasi filan ethropi. One more time. Pshoisefe esmo erok evol gension fietaf tamionet finemepkahi doxasi filan ethropi. One more time. Pshoisefe esmo erok evol gension fietaf tamionet finemepkahi doxasi filan ethropi. Okay, moving on to the next one. Mare pati ho hontem pekim tho epshois makati ni katapexaji doxasi filan ethropi. Okay, pay attention to the pauses. Mare pati ho hontem pekim tho epshois makati ni katapexaji doxasi filan ethropi. Okay, so after pati ho, there's a pause. Mare pati ho hontem pekim tho epshois makati ni katapexaji doxasi filan ethropi. And of course, after pexaji, there has to be a natural pause in order to give room for the doxasi filan ethropi. Okay, so it's going to go like this. Mare pati ho hontem pekim tho epshois makati ni katapexaji doxasi filan ethropi. Okay. This one does not have a lot of pauses. It's kind of just going straight through, but it's going to go like this. Fee honem pekim tho enjepa axi yo makatapexaji matan hoi doxasi filan ethropi. This is another awkward one because you kind of have to break from the rhythm, right? Or just kind of the basic melody. So Fe honem pekim tho enjepa axi yo makatapexaji matan hoi doxasi filan ethropi. Fe honem pekim tho enjepa axioma katapexaji matan hoi doxasi filan ethropi. So the kata is going to go a little bit faster after pa axioma. Efe e honem pekim tho in jepa axioma katapexagi matan hoi doxasi filan ethropi. Okay. And that's something that can be a little bit tough about the horses and Tentheeno here, is that there's not always going to be a time where it's perfectly in beat or perfectly in rhythm and perfectly in tune. There's going to be times where it breaks, and that's where you kind of just have to remember by basic muscle memory, basic pattern recognition, what's happening in terms of the tune breaking. So it's going to go like this. F e e honem pekim tho in jepa axi yo makatapexagi matan hoi doxasi filan ethropi. Okay. Here's another one. Erena es photo vevi en o esmo eshop akshan et savoy enek methmi doxasi filan ethropi. One more time. Erena es photo vevi en o esmo eshop akshan et savoy enek methmi doxasi filan ethropi. So there's not pauses here, but there's more so prolonged parts of particular words. So erena, the na in the na es photo is going to be prolonged. Erena es photo vevi en o esmo eshop akshan. The an in akshan et savoy is going to be prolonged. Akshan et savoy enek methmi doxasi filan ethropi. Okay, so one more time altogether. Erena es photo vevi en o esmo eshop akshan et savoy enek methmi doxasi filan ethropi. Okay, here's another one. Palas if er o u henigzaji genikentoli tiro han methmene doxasi filan ethropi. Again, another one that's a little bit confusing here because you're prolonging han in han methmi and going a little bit faster in the genikentoli tiro han, right? So the genikentoli is going to be a bit fast. So here's how it's going to go. Palas if er o u henigzaji genikentoli tiro han methmene doxasi filan ethropi. One more time. Palas if er o u henigzaji genikentoli tiro han methmene doxasi filan ethropi. One more time. Palas if er o u henigzaji genikentoli tiro han methmene doxasi filan ethropi. Perfect. Right? So keep practicing that. Keep repeating it until it's down, almost to the point where you don't even need to look at the words. Okay? Here's the next verse. Maris shopen jetik jij, if not me, jenekin toli I epithimin erou, doxasi filan ethropi. The I epithimin erou needs to be done a little bit slower because the thing you'll notice is that when you try to rush through it, go fast through it, because it's a lot of vowel sounds all together, it gets a little bit confusing. So you're going like I epithimin, like it's very, very hard to do that fast. So start it slow. So we'll start this verse slow. Maris shopen jetik jij, if not me, jenekin toli I epithimin erou. So practice that part. I epithimin erou, doxasi filan ethropi. Okay? Here's how it's going to go. Maris shopen jetik jij, if not me, jenekin toli I epithimin erou, doxasi filan ethropi. One more time. Maris shopen jetik jij, if not me, jenekin toli I epithimin erou, doxasi filan ethropi. Okay, so keep the rhythm going. I chisho o impek o guy ipshois o opek nomos beta meleti doxasi filan ethropi. So again, not a lot of breaks on this one. It's kind of just going straight through. So the I and I chisho is a little bit wrong. I chisho o impek o guy ipshois o opek nomos beta meleti doxasi filan ethropi. And here on the ipshois o, make sure you emphasize the o. O pek nomos beta meleti. It's like that. I chisho o empek o gai epshois o pek nomos beta meleti. Doxasi filan ethropi. One more time. I chisho o empek o gai epshois o pek nomos beta meleti. Doxasi filan ethropi. Okay. Next verse. Se on genjita epsitio esse esmo erok o nekhap ev ervoithin eroi doxasi filan ethropi. So similar to this verse here, I epithemin erou, you need to do here the ev ervoithin eroi a little bit slow. just to get all the vowel sounds in, right? So it's going to start S-E on injeta ipsishi. The injeta ipsishi has to be a little bit faster. So it's S-E on injeta ipsishi o S-E ismo erok o nekhap ev voithin eroi dog sasi fila nethropi. And then the rest of it, you're kind of just going straight through, no pauses. It's going to go like this. S-E on injeta ipsishi o S-E ismo erok o nekhap ev voithin eroi dog sasi fila nethropi. S-E on kinjita epsisio, S-E esmo erok o nekhap ev voithin eroi, dog sasi fila nethropi. Like that. Okay? Next verse is going to go like the following. Aisorem mefriti en o s o u aftako koten sapek vokje nekentoli mp erpo ufsh dog sasi fila nethropi. Okay. Aisore mefriti en u aftako koten sapek vogje neken toli mp erpo ufsh dog sasi filan thropi. One more time. Aisore mefriti en u aftako koten sapek vogje neken toli mp erpo ufsh dog sasi filan thropi. One more time. Aisore mefriti en u aftako koten sapek vok sheneken toli mp erpo ufsh tok sasi filan thropi. After pretty much each of these colons, you're taking a break. Aisore mefriti en aftako koten sapek vok sheneken toli mp erpo ufsh tok sasi filan thropi. Not too bad, right? So just practice that. These ones are going to be very easy because it's a common refrain and a common response we do. So it's going to go like this. Doxebetri ke eyoke ageyop nevmati doxasi filan ethropi. Two more times. Keep repeating. Doxebetri ke eyoke ageyop nevmati doxasi filan ethropi. Doxebetri ke eyoke ageyop nevmati doxasi filan ethropi. Doxebetri ke eyoke ageyop nevmati doxasi filan ethropi. The next verse is very simple, straight following of this. Kenin ke ai ke stoseo nastonionon amin doxasi filan ethropi. One more time. Kenin ke ai ke stoseo nastonionon amin doxasi filan ethropi. The onon amin has to be a little bit faster. Kenin ke ai ke stoseo nastonionon amin doxasi filan ethropi. Okay. This one has a few pauses here. P-O-O emefyo nemepshiri nempep nevma ethoabi gentino nemshai nentini enetiro amin doxasi filan ethropi. So pauses happening at the beginning. P-O-O emefyo nemepshiri nempep nevma ethoabi gentino nemshai nentini enetiro amin doxasi filan ethropi. One more time. B-O-O emefyo nemepshiri nempep nevma ethoabi gentino nemshai neentini enetiro amin. The enteni enetiro amin has to be a little bit faster, right? So it's going to go B-O-O emefyo nemepshiri nempep nevma ethoabi gentino nemshai neentini enetiro amin doxasi filan ethropi. Okay, this one has a few pauses as well. P-O-O nak P-my Romian agathos P-O-O entek mavim parthenos nemyetho webtiro entak doxasi filan ethropi. So the knock, the beginning actually, P-O-O knock P-my Romian agathos P-O-O entek mavim parthenos nemyetho webtiro entak doxasi filan ethropi. So the P-O-O, immediate pause. P-O-O knock, pause. P-my Romian agathos, pause. P-O-O and pause. Entek mavim parthenos, pause. Nemni etho ebtiro entak, pause. Doxasi filan ethropi. So it's going to go like this. P-O-O knock, P-my Romian agathos, P-O-O entek mavim parthenos, nemni etho ebtiro entak, doxasi filan ethropi. Now you're probably asking, why do we have to emphasize the pauses so much? The reason why is because if you're leading, for example, or you're the one who's who's singing or chanting, it's easier for people to be able to follow through if there's clear pauses. If it's kind of all just flowing as one, it can be very hard to flow. And sometimes people, in the process of being a little bit too musical with hymns, end up making it difficult for other people to follow along or sing, right? So the emphasis here is just make it clear, right? P-O-O, knock, P-my Romian agathos, P-O-O, entek mavim parthenos, nemni etho abdiro entak, doxasi philanethropi. Okay, here's the next one. Doxasi o monogenis ageia elaisonimes, doxasi philanethropi. Three basic pauses. One after omonogenis, one after tres, agia tres, pause. Ilaisonimas, pause, doxasi philanethropi, right? So doxasi o monogenis ageia tres, ilaisonimas, doxasi philanethropi. One more time. Doxasi o monogenis ageia tres, ilaisonimas, doxasi philanethropi. Okay, next one. This one's gonna be a little hard because it's long and there's not a lot of breaks. So I'm gonna go like this. Marefton finje if noti maro gore volen genev gaji tiro maro fotevol ha et hi empefo engeon veneth mostem pefran ethoab doxasi filan ethropi. The only pause happens after maro fotevol. Right? So it's gonna look at this. Marefton finje if noti maro gore volen genev gaji tiro maro fotevol ha et hi empefo engeon veneth mostem pefran ethoab doxasi filan ethropi. One more time. Marefton finje if noti maro gore volen genev gaji tiro maro fotevol ha et hi empefo engeon veneth mostem pefran ethoab. The empefran ethoab is going to be a bit faster. Doxasi filan ethropi. Okay, so one more time. Marefton finje if noti maro gore volen genev gaji tiro maro fotevol ha et hi empefo engeo veneth mostem pefran ethoab doxasi filan ethropi. So that's how you're going to have to follow along, right? Is pausing after maro fotevol, pause, and then you keep going. Okay, so try that on your own. Marefton finje if noti maro gore volen genev gaji tiro maro fotevol ka et hi empefo onni veneth mostem pefran ethoab doxasi filan ethropi. One more time, because I briefly broke in the next part. Marefton finje if noti maro gore volen genev gaji tiro maro fotevol ha et hi empefo engeon veneth mostem pefran ethoab doxasi filan ethropi. One more time. Marefton finje if noti maro gore volen genev gaji tiro maro fotevol ha et hi empefo engeon veneth mostem pefran ethoab doxasi filan ethropi. More time. Marefton finje if noti maro gore volen genev gaji tiro maro fotevol ha et hi empefo engeon veneth mostem pefran ethoab doxasi filan ethropi. Okay. Marefton finje if noti maro gore volen genev gaji tiro maro fotevol ha et hi empefo engeon veneth mostem pefran ethoab doxasi filan ethropi. Okay. The next last ones are going to be slower. Peklaus de maref shopi hen pies moen hanen shoen shonem hanev vanev vae virim pek osh. Okay. Peklaus de maref shopi hen pies moen hanen shoen shonem hanev vanev vae virim pek osh. One more time. Beklaus de maref shope hen pies moen hanen shoen shonem haneth vaneth vae virim pek osh. The last verse is going to go Shoise ke a o on ena esfoto eri roigo empek esmo. Shois eke a o on ena esfoto o eri roigo empek esmo. One more time. Shois eke a o on ena esfoto o eri roigo empek esmo. So hold the empek esmo. And then you would proceed to, in this case, Tana vete anastasis, or If it's not the season for Tenov, Ete Anastasis, you would go to the first canticle. But that covers the short tune of Tentheeno, all Coptic. God willing, you have other recordings and other resources you can use. And if you found this resource helpful, I really, really thank God for it. But if you have any questions, any concerns, if you need anything at all, please let me know. Thank God that we are able to have this and share in the beauty of learning hymns and learning how to praise God all together in fellowship. And God willing, this is something that will make our tasbihas more united, increase engagement, and obviously encourage us all to participate to a much greater extent. But so thank you guys so much. God bless. And if you need anything, I'm always here.